Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Claudia Garcia. Well, some of you already know me. I am the planning manager of Integrated Solutions. With me is Alfredo Vila and Cristian Castañeda, and also part of the planning team of Integrated Solutions. In this session, we're going to address 3 items. I'm going to start with the activity codes, and then we will continue with WBS and activity codes. This is our agenda today. Any question that you have, please, in the end of this session, or you can leave your question in the chat box. Please consider that we have interpretation services options, so you can choose the channel of the language of your preference. Next. And here we have the idea of the projects in Lotus Spring and what is the importance. Next. And this is applicable to any sector. It's not only integrated solutions because we have a whole program in G2G. So we have to keep the same codes throughout the whole 3 sectors. First of all, we have the PDMS that is in the SCDMP01. I recommend it to review it. All everything related to projects code. We have a business structure of projects. This is the PDAPS that is the breakdown where P6 organizes the scopes in the program, and the EPS of works breakdown that is EDT of the program, or known as the BWBS, that has a level from 0 to 3, and the EPS includes additional sections with the right management of the program schedules. We have also an organization structure, the breakdown, the OBS, that is defined for the users of E6 to see who can have access and what types of schedules. And that way, we can be sure that maybe somebody of integrated solution, for instance, is not going to change the program by mistake. Somebody of education and going to increase the program. Next one, please. What we do is defining the profile. So we have profiles ARCC1, ARCC2, planning manager, specialist in PMO planning, and super user of ARCC. So according to the profile that you have been allocated to the roles, and you may have, you will have a certain usage of Lotus Spring. Maybe you can enable some functions or not. And if you see that you're missing some function, you can ask to any of the leaders of the sector. We have project codes that are used to group and consolidate projects, obtain data for the reports, and standardize throughout the work streams. And that's why it's very useful that we always have the right code, that we fix the data within the Power BI and DW. The WBS have the right code, because we need to add the reports of integrated solution in addition to the education, in addition to hospitals, to know pretty well how is the program going in general. And we have also resources. There is, we find it is no labor, is approve the budget of the project, the idea of the resources that it should be used in all the schedules, ARCC-C, and the name that you will have is ARCC cost loading, that is in soles. Next one, please. Now, within the updates or within the project delivery, you will find 2 sections in the Lotus Spring. One that is the updates, and the other one that is baselines. And in updates, we have the ongoing updates and the previous updates. We have this breakdown. When there is an ongoing one, the code of the ID project is just the code of the project, that's all. But when it was the previous one, we add in the code of the project with a dash UNN or 01, 02, 03, depending on the update. And for the name of the project, we can add in the ongoing directly the name of the project. And when there is something previous one, we add the name of the project dash with the first 3 letters of the month and the year. As you can see in the example here, the Quebrada, Kansas, -Feb, -2021. In the baselines, we will add the code of a project dash BL of baseline 01, 02, 03, as long as it changes the baselines. And for the name, we will use the name of the project dash BL01. This is the standard, please, for all work streams. Whenever you uploading a new program, a new update, a new baseline, consider these names for this, these codes for these projects. Next one. The schedules of the contractors, we have another encodings. You will see that there is updating of the contractor. We will have the code of the project dash CU01 of updated 01 dash the review R1, R2, R3. And for the name, we will place the name of the project as it is in the dictionary of BWBS dash CU dash the month, only the first 3 letters of the month and the year. When there is a baseline of the contractor, it's similar to the updating of the codes, but you add CB as a baseline instead of CU. This means contractor baseline. And for the name, it will be the same. We will replace the name of the project dash CB01. When the schedule of the contractor is under review, we add CR contractor review, CR 01, 02, 03, and the same for the project name of the project dash CR01. If we need to remove some schedule of the contractor for some reasons, we need to add the code of a project in dash CU or CB01 or CR01, whatever corresponds, dash delete. And for the name, it's just the same as it was the name previously, and we add delete in the end. And we add it to the deleted ones. Next one. We have another new one that is the scenario planning, where we have 3 different modes: the assessment in the of the impacts in the baseline, sandbox, and the new projects. The impact assessment in the baseline will always have the code of the project dash IA, that is impact assessment in English, and 01. And for the name, we will place the name of the project dash IA01-EC4250, whatever corresponds. In this case, for instance, this is a compensation event. That's why we name it EC compensation event 42. In the case of sandbox, we will add the code of the project dash SA of sand 01. And for the name, we add the name of the project SA01, structure change, whatever is related to make reference what we are doing with that program. When we entered in new projects that didn't arrive to change board yet and are not approved as part of our baseline G2G, then we add as a code the code of a project dash NP of new project 01. And for the name, which is the same, we add the name dash NP01. So this is all the notes that you will find within Primavera. It's very important that mostly that every time that you are uploading in the new schedule of the contractor, the new schedule to update, please keep in mind the name and review that it's the right one. And if you find some schedule that doesn't have the nomenclature appropriated, it just let us know to your colleague so that the owner of that schedule will change it. Now I take over Christian that will continue with the next topic. Hi everyone, my name is Cristian Castañeda. Many of you don't know me. I've just started 2 months ago, and today in the coffee session we're going to discuss about the WBS. Next one, please. Here a bit of theory. The first two topics of WBS work breakdown structure is a hierarchical breakdown of the scope of the project, the program that includes the project's execution and the different levels that we can have. Basically, many of you have already seen in projects that WBS is very important because follows a structure that it can be aligned for all the works and also helps us to promote the consistency in the scope, and all the activities could be visible for all the team. And also helps us to mitigate effort multiplication because it limits all the scope of the works of the projects of the program and the portfolio. In this chart, you can see the referral diagram, how is the behavior of the project's portfolio for ARCC, where we have 7 levels, and the 0 level is the organization. Then later on we will see it, how do we lead these communication levels. All this information is defined in the WBS dictionary that is in the database of ARCC in proceedings. Next one, please. Ready. Here you can see the diagram of the superior levels of the portfolio. The portfolio is reserved for all communication activities and reports and levels of allocated authority. This is related to the communications with other organizations, and that's why it's stated as level 0. Here you can see, for instance, in the EPS level 1, that is a portfolio that is Peruvian government consultancy. In level 0, the board of members of G2G, and the other ones is formed by the work stream. And in level 2, the sector function, and that will become in the program of the portfolio. Some examples here, for instance, in the EPS level 1, you see the general manager, the communications in the area of project management, and the engaging of stakeholders, knowledge transfer, and so on. Next one, please. And here you can see at the level of program, the WBS, where level 1, as I said, is in the work stream, defines the program of works G2G and in the flows of works within in the management. In the organization, we have also communications, and then is the general manager and the project managers, programs, participation of the stakeholders, knowledge transfer, and delivery. And in level 2 are the sectors, the functions that become in the efficient flows of works. And in the level 3, you could see the level of projects that it maybe is the most important part, where we're going to apply higher emphasis, because from here we can structure all the projects that we can review in Primavera P6. And we need to respect the structure so that we could have uniformity in all the projects, both in the delivery, in health, education. Next one, please. And the next one is WBS of the projects that it starts in level 3 up to level 7. In level 3 defines the project within each function or work stream. Here we can add or remove projects according to the behavior of the program stage in the portfolio. Level 4 defines the buildings or assets, individual assets, for instance, as a highway or open area of infrastructure space. In level 5, it defines the stages of the life cycle of projects, and these are aligned with the line structures of the project. And here we have construction, design, and different stages that in the next slide we are going to see in further detail with some examples. Level 6 defines the working packages. These packages allow us that the WBS and the has cost breakdown has a ratio 1:1, and this is very related to the cost. And packages of work is specifically for each project. Each project within the scope has assigned the work package, and the element of work that is the level, latest level, the standardized level, level 7, that should be set up. So here is defining the work elements and control within the process of work. And all of these details, as I said, you can find them in the dictionary of WBS. Next one, please. Okay, here we're going to stop a little bit in one example of how we should manage and how has been managed a project at the level of WBS. On the first slide, in the Primavera, you see since level 3 up to level 7, this is an ideal example that we perform. Where in the first level 3 of the project, that is the first level of project, here you have the project. I'm going to turn on my cursor. The next level, that is the active sector. In this case, for instance, we can see riparian defenses, River Chico, Matagente, Canales El Carmen, cerca Puerta Blanca. That is correct too. The next level comes together with the stages, and that is made in a proper way because we have procurement, design, and construction. Then we have level 6, that is a work package, that in this case it would be external work. So there is a subdivision that is properly made by the scope of the project. And in the last level, that is the elements of work, we have also part of the scope of the project. As for that, that works, we have the activities, but you can also introduce higher levels of WBS according to the exigency or the needs of the project schedule. And here we are not limiting or generating higher levels of WBS, but it should be starting from 7 downwards. And the next example to the right, you can see a schedule that was not structured properly. In this case, San Ildefonso. In a level 3 of the project, that is the first level for a project, is correct. However, at the level 4, that it should be the active asset sector, the level of a project, repeat it again. In the level 5, that we should have for the stages, I don't know if they define in the stages, the elements of work, maybe talking about dams, dikes, retention dikes. In the level 6, that it should have been a work packages, it was defined in an inferior structure, even the one that they related to the specific parts of the project, according to the strategy of the project. And 11.7, that it should have been the elements of work. And here we add that is the construction stages. And this should have happened in level 5. According to the structure of WBS that we have for ARCC, it's important to respect them, those standardized levels. However, as I said, according to the strategy of the project, and many times we need to deal with more views of the packages of the sector, maybe according to sectors, if it's a highway, or could be coordinated, or maybe through a tunnel, X pipeline in different projects. But however, it's important to respect WBS up to the level 7, that is the element of work. Now I take over to Alfredo, that is going to introduce you the next topic. Thank you, Christian. The next block, the next part corresponds to activity codes. Could we Continue. Well, the activity codes is a tool, very powerful tool within the software that we are using in ARCC, that is Oracle Primavera P6. And the big utility for activity codes is the help that offer us in focusing our analysis. However, this analysis will be engaged if, as you see in this image, and if we could move to the next one, please. If we're going to have a huge amount of activity codes right now created in the Primavera platform that is a load screen, each of you can review through the menu of Primavera the activity codes created at the time in different levels globally by EPS and at the level of project and we are going to mention later on. Then in this image, for instance, at the time of allocating or reviewing the different groups of activity costs that were created, you will find a very extensive list. Next one, please. And then what usually happens or generates with a big amount of activity codes created is something as we have here in this slide. Many of the activity codes are not allocated. It's important to understand the purpose of creating a new activity code. And also it's important to keep in mind that whenever you are going to require the creation of a new activity code, to keep in mind that you don't develop or manage a project isolatedly, but you are doing it within a program, within a portfolio of projects. Therefore, as long as it's possible, what we expect is that this creation of activity codes won't be duplicated against maybe similar activity codes created in other projects. And even more, having appropriate scaling of activity codes globally, that many of them that we are going to review now, and many of them will reply to the needs that may happen according to each project. On the opposite, if we don't consider this and don't take into account and we create directly activity codes in our projects in particular, we may fall in this scenario where we have a huge amount of activity codes created, where it makes it more difficult to assign the activity code that we require. And it's also makes it more difficult to filter the information as long as we need it. And we generate an unnecessary load of information within the platform. Okay, so can we move to the next one? Thank you. What is the purpose of activity codes? Well, we can summarize in 3 items, very important. On one side, filtering a huge amount of activities. On the other part, grouping them, and then the other part is putting them in order. If we have already seen in previous sessions that the structure, original structure of how we are going to organize our projects is WBS, we always have the need to visualize the project ordered in such a way that is different. Maybe visualize it. Christian, could you please turn off your microphone because it's filtering a sound? Thank you. Then we will see ourselves in the need of, for instance, something that usually is particular from DSI, the CUIs, the ordering according to CUIs. As a way that was already discussed within the sector, we could assign activity codes related to CUIs. In that way, we can see the data of the chronogram in function to CUIs. Or maybe we could see by its subcontractors, because our project will be executed by a managing contractor, and this contractor will be allocating work packages to different contractors. So maybe it's important to see the information not as WBS, but in function to the work that is executed by each subcontractor. So this whole series of requirements and needs that each actor in the project is going to have, it's a very efficient way to satisfy this information needs through activity codes that enable us to filter a huge amount of activities in a very ordered and structured way. Therefore, through this filter, we are going to group all activities or those that have share the same activity codes, and then finally visualize them in an ordered way. Next one, please. Well, we don't want to go deeper too much in the technician part of the activity codes, but just to remind you that there will be very stressed activity codes in the creation of Primavera, the global ones that is featured that they can be assigned to all activities of all the projects that we have gathered in the load screen. And also we could have activity codes created at the level of EPS. And the advantage here, and the reason why we have the second theme, is because it enables us having a filter or administration of the use of activity code for specific EPS. For instance, in the next slides, we share with you the activity codes that we have created specifically for DSI, for integrated solutions, and that could have been created within this second type of EPS. And finally, we will have the activity codes at the level of project. You can deduct it directly or exclusively of a project in particular. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, we need to be very careful in creating activity codes randomly without having validated previously that globally we already have activity code with similar characteristics with those one that we already have. If we don't do that, we are going to fall in a scenario where we have a huge amount of activity codes with the same name or similar names that the filter the same, they are filtering the activities with the same logics. And at the time of allocating them, it's very tedious because we don't know exactly what is the activity code that they created or the one that you need to assign. It is possible that in Primavera there would be more than one activity code exactly with the same name. And that's why on the first slide that I shared with you, I think it was contract or contractor. I don't remember the name of the activity code. If my memory doesn't fail, it's 20 or 15 activity codes with the same name. And maybe this is happening because many projects created the activity code with the same name. But obviously Primavera doesn't validate the existence of that project. It's not as the idea of a project that there is just one in Primavera, and you can have two projects with the same idea. In this case, there could be many criticals with the same name. We've got to be very careful to avoid the saturation and the amount of information entered in Primavera. Well, these types of activity codes, we move to the next slide, please. And what we would like to emphasize in this latest part is the activity codes that are mandatory, that all our schedules at the level of program should have, and also that are within the guidelines that we have in the PDMS within the management of schedules. And we have in the first chart, we have the activity code named ARCC baseline milestone, that every time that you are generating a new line management, every time that you are going to perform a rebaseline, every time that you generate information, new information or updating of a project, we need to keep them in mind, the ARCC baseline milestones. If this in this image I got from the B01 until to B10, but the real load sprint, because I took things from the guide in the low sprint, we have one additional that corresponds to the handover. So we have in the end 11. And the description is pretty clear. It's making reference to that which milestone of control should be allocated, what is the road ITT, and the date where we launch the ITT, when it's allocated, the main contractor award, when will the contractor starts and date, the access date, or access to site, and also an important milestone item is the construction start, the final design approval, the construction complete, commercial closeout, and project finish. In addition to what I said, the milestone at the beginning for the start handover. To the right, we have something similar. We have basically the same descriptions, but in this case, these are the activity codes named as ARCC reporting milestones. So we're going to allocate them to the planet milestone, to the foreseen milestones. And remember that in our schedule, so we're going to have the planet milestone or the foreseen milestones for those that are going to be connected logically with the network diagram. Therefore, it's normal that this can start moving from one month to another because it generates delays, advances. So we will be very dynamic, but those to the left that correspond to the baseline will continue being static until there will happen some updating in the baseline. Next one, please. The next activity codes that are mandatory. We have ARCC design milestones generated to control the milestone related to the development of design. We have seen from 0 until DF, D1 up to D7, DF, according to the solution proposed by integrated solutions, we use from D3 up to DF. We use the special coordination submission, or what it would be the equivalent to RIBA 3, and then the D4, that is reference to the RIBA 4, the technical design submission, then the D5 and DF to demonstrate the design completion. La fecha en donde se estaría finalizando. It should be finalizing.
Tenemos en el lado
And then in the end, we have to the right a group of activity codes very important that is included in the guide of allocation of milestones that maybe we usually don't use it as frequently as we do it with the other 3 activity codes that we have already mentioned. but it's very important for the proper filtering of information, the level of sector, work streams, and at the end of the program. This is the ARCC Power BI summary schedule. And you have here three items within the activity code, the X for rebaseline, earn the value adjustment. And you can remember that those ones that have already performed a rebasing, or those of you that are working with rebasing, when you assume a cutting date, it's important to keep the earned value already reported. But as a consequence of the variations on the budget, it could be that there are earned values that you stopped earning in the previous months that you need to add or discount, or the opposite can happen to that you earned exceeding what it should be if you consider the updated budget. So it is the need, and that's how our guidelines are requesting it, so that we need to make an adjustment to this earned value in the immediate following period. So we see ourselves in the need to create specific activities to load this adjustment of earned value. And since this doesn't represent a physical activity, it needs to be identified together with this activity code, so that when it's necessary to filter these activities that represent a work that requests time or resources, don't combine it with these activities created only for the adjustments of earned value. Similar situation happens with the X1, and that is the budget holding activities. In many cases, when it could be with an updating of the baseline, or that you make a follow-up to the schedule monthly, some activities are incorporated in the schedule only because we request to upload a budget. Let's remember that within our platform of OSFIL, we have integrated the schedules that are charted with the ongoing budget of the project. So sometimes there are activities that usually are is difficult to locate them throughout the time or link them properly, because its nature is to foster a budget, but it's not necessarily linked to the physical development of an activity. Therefore, in these cases, or the management activities can fit in this group. That's why we have this activity code X1 that is budget holding activities, or that contain a budget. And then it would be remaining one to identify uh, preliminary activities that we know as preliminary and provisional. So in that way, we filter the activities, the previous activities, previous to the permanent construction activities as main construction. The activities of main works. Next one, please. And then with this, we are closing. As I said, the previous ones are activity codes that are mandatory. All the projects, without any further exception of the work stream, should have it. And finally, to wrap it up, um, I would like to highlight that within integrated solutions that form part of this work stream, it's familiar to you. We have activity codes created that all the projects of integrated solutions should have it as assigned, as I said. And I'm doing more emphasis on this. Before creating activity codes in this specific case, if we're talking about an integrated solutions project, let's verify those ones that are already created, because many of them, as I said, I'm going to cover practically all the needs of information filtering that may have as a specialist in planning. Then this, we could save the work generating something that was previously created. Okay, with this, we will be ending the activity codes session and the coffee session as well. Thank you so much. Do you have any further question about any of these three topics? Please raise your hand. I saw a question in the chat. It becomes Luis.
Hola, ¿cómo estás, Luis? Sí,
Hi,
la idea es que la estructura se respete en todo el nivel del paquete de trabajo.
Hi, Luis. The idea is that the structure will be respected in all the packages of work because the contractor has the basis of the project that covers many stages. The idea is to have the requested traceability so that it comes, if it comes from the level of execution, construction, this in the stage that it is right now, upwards, so that we can have a quick identification of the schedules and the packages of works, of assets, elements of works, and so on. And also it's aligned to costs. Complementing the reply of Christian, this is very important, guys, that the contractor always respect the dictionary. That's why when we provide the onboarding to the contractor, the first thing that we share with them here in SharePoint, you will find all the documents that you need to respect, and the part of them is the dictionary that you know has changed to the review number 5. And we are going to provide them a guide where to find the links and the dictionary, but I suppose that most of you have it. We have seen many cases when in the updates, we approved already the baseline, but in the updates, the contractor is starting to increase levels to the WBS, level 6, level 5. I've already seen they adding level 4. And you can't permit that, you can't allow that, and this is a rejection reason for the contractor because they are not compliant with the information of course with all of that was requested, the requirements that are written in the contract. So please review always every time that they submit it to updating it that the WBS is the right one, that they don't add notes. They can add activities, but not notes at the level 7. And then in the level 8 or 9, they can add some. If you have any question, please raise your hand. Is hand raised is José Carlos Valdés. Hi, good afternoon. This is José Carlos Valdés in CASMA. My question is regarding that if the contractor sometimes proposes WBS, and if this is activity A1, A2, A3 in that order, and during the execution, and he's proposing that the WBS is 1, 2, 3, it changes to A1, A2, A3 because on the first floor is going to start with the front sides, and he had as a first front. Is this a change valuable? And what is it one of the reasons for its sustain? Consider that the front will start different with something different that was planned, and also if keep the same activities that are after in the A2 will end before, and they will leave comments in the schedule because the successor activities were completed, having the predecessors to be completed. Did you understand my question?
Hola, ¿cómo estás, José Carlos?
Hi, Jose Carlos. Good afternoon. First of all, we need to understand that the WBS, it doesn't define you the execution strategy of the schedule. The WBS is a structure that has an order, level hierarchy. As you know, it reaches to the packages of work, the elements of work. If there is a change in the sequence, some strategy change, because definitely everything that we know is the strategy in projects, basically because of external or internal elements or are foreseen or odd things you need to mitigate to calculate the impact. Then it's a question. However, as we have this WBS shouldn't bind you. In the case of subcontractors, they can use activity codes or creating work levels in inferior levels. That would be my recommendation. Maybe Claudia, Alfredo, do you have something to add? Yes, exactly. It's basically the same. The contractor can change the order of the activities, but it's the execution, the strategy that the contractor will keep. And that's why we have a living schedule that every month we keep moving in lengths and so on. But the baseline is the only thing that doesn't move.
No sé si eso responde a tu pregunta.
Did I reply to your question, Jose? Well, mainly within in its WBS level 6, they consider it as floor 1, 2, 3, and then they add their activities and the activities that they will go to perform in each floor. And then for a sequence, they are changing the order, they are changing the nomenclature. The WBS pack is changing that because before we had point 1, point 2, point 3, point 2 is changing that in that order. That would be basically all. What we can do is changing the code and the code that these activities have want to change, but the schedule is alive. Then it's possible to place the events that it needs. Yes, of course. The structure of the levels that we have introduced should be respected, and in levels that works, there wouldn't be any issue in changing it. I would suggest you that at the level of diagnosis, you can review it with the specialist of your work stream, and he will clarify you about this topic. Okay, thank you so much. Hi, do you hear me? Hi, Tanya, yes. I have a question that maybe it's important. What would happen if in the case of the activity codes that are X and I or Y? Because in some updates, we found that they place it in many activities, and I would like you to explain us what happens if I put them incorrectly, and we have this selection of activities codes with the X and Y. Hi, Tanya. Well, if it's allocated incorrectly, in the activity code is assigned incorrectly, what would be the consequences of that? It will depend on the information as a user you would like to filter in the schedule. Finally, allocating an activity code is like assigning a tag the activity. And if later on I see the need to filter the information that is going to use that tag and this tag was incorrectly assigned, then the result of my filter will be the incorrect one. But if it maybe is incorrectly assigned, my filters don't use that activity code, then nothing will happen. Maybe a similar example that used to happen, it comes together with activity codes of baseline milestones and the reporting milestones. And more than one time happened to us that it was assigned as a baseline milestone when in real it was a reporting milestone. Then when finally the information was showing in the Power BI or was summarized and we filtered it in Primavera, in some cases, we had that the baseline milestone was moving month by month. It's something weird because we had a baseline, it should move. And the cause of that was because it was assigned as a baseline of what should have been a reporting and planned and foreseen milestone. That would be the consequence of signing incorrectly an activity code. It will depend if I'm going to use some filtered information that is going to use such activity code. Did I reply to your question, Tanya? Yes, yes, it does. It's always good to know, to make a comment only that in some projects, for instance, that we found that the updating, they place it to all the activities in the second stage, the activity codes of X and Y. And at the time of extracting the dates of this schedule, we couldn't read a whole stage of the project. And also what you're saying, that it will take the activity codes on the baseline will give us a bad reading in general. It was just a comment to keep in mind if reviewing or performing a review of which activity codes we are adding or placing. Maybe for a movement, we place an activity code in the updating wrongly, and it could be that the reports of the project won't be as we expected will be final. Does anyone else have a question? We have some minutes before ending the session. If somebody has a question, Claudia, Crisia, Alfredo may provide the final recommendations to have a reflection. Just ending here, just please keep the project BI, Power BI updated. If you just keep an order in such a way that if you are not there and anyone else needs to enter to the load screen, it can use the codes and where to go and what if a project is about. It's just a label we're adding to each project that everybody will be able to know, understand what you are seeing here with the code. And that's why it's useful this encoding of WBS. And that's why you have a guide that you need to follow that was sent by Agustin here in the chat box. And that's all from my side. Well, from my part, I would like you to stress the importance of WBS. Don't assume it's a structure to perform the schedule, but it is also the structure for the whole project. So it's important because WBS is what it will be prevailing above all the encodings and the structures of costs, the scopes, and so on. That's why it's important to have the WBS very clearly and respecting the guidelines that we have in the dictionary of WBS. And from my side, just a recommendation that I will give you is the care that we need to provide with the information we handle in the below the screen. As we meant the comments here in the session, we have those ones created for according to the needs of the development of the scheduled management. So I would recommend not abusing the use of training with some that many of us have like a mirror of we have in upstreams of notes in healthcare education. Training is not in the area of work, is the training area is a walkthrough stage. Is somewhere where we needed to develop the schedule and so on. Is the one that it has been stated here in this session. This enables us to keep a control the proper profile of administration, existing changes. So let's not abuse of training because with that we lose the approach of the updatings of the permissions that we request. And that would be my recommendation. Let's work always in the node created for that purpose, as we explained it in this session. Thank you. Okay, thank you so much, Claudia, Christian, Alfredo, also for your comments for the presentation. With this, we'll be ending the session today. Let's remind you that all this session was recorded and will be shared in the portal Learning with Changes. If you have an additional query, please use lines. The replies will not be immediately, but the community is to find and share the knowledge with all the people of ARCC. And with this, we ended the session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you, Valerie.